Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Valley Mountain Regional Center. My name is Leilani Walter. I'm the Executive Director here at Valley Mountain. Welcome to the community conversation on spending data and equity efforts. I'm going to pass the mic to several members of my team, but before we do that, we're going to start off with some information about interpretation. Gabby?
Thank you, Leilani. My name is Gabriela Lopez, and I am the Cultural Specialist for VMRC, but just some information for interpretation. For interpretation in language, please click in the white globe at the bottom of the screen labeled Interpretation. Next, select the language and select Mute of the original audio. Interpretación en español, haga clic en el globo blanco que está en la parte inferior de la pantalla. Con la etiqueta de interpretación, por favor, seleccione el lenguaje que quiere, el idioma, perdón, y póngalo en mute. Y nada más unos recordatorios, reminder, ASL interpretation, our spotlight and live, closed caption is also active. This meeting is being recorded and materials will be posted on the VMRC website.
And then as Gabby, thank you, Gabby, the materials will be posted in both Spanish and English on the website tomorrow. So welcome, everyone. I'd like to just say that, we appreciate everyone attending here in person at Valley Mountain, but we're also thankful for those that are able to attend via Zoom. So our first step is to say welcome and thank you for being here. We know there are many things that you could be doing this evening. So taking the time to listen more about what VMRC does and what are some of the equity efforts that we have, we really appreciate it. And I want to first start by giving an overview of our agenda. We'll have a land acknowledgement first of the Native people here on this land. We will talk about the purpose of the meeting, some agreements that we'll make, some spending data, which is, I think, most of what we typically hear at these meetings. We'll also talk about some of the equity efforts that we've had here at Valley Mountain. And more importantly, we'll talk about your community input, and you'll be able to both provide input here in person, as well as those that are calling in and listening in. We have many talented people that are going to be able to hear your particular written comment or conversation, and they will be able to add that comment information and we'll be able to ask that question. You'll be able to mute and unmute and have an opportunity to say your question in voice or in writing. Brian.
As a member of the Cherokee Nation, it's a privilege to give the land acknowledgement today. We acknowledge the land on which we gather today is the unceded land of the Yachikumne Yokuts and neighboring Miwok tribes. We are the traditional custodians of what is now San Joaquin County. Today, the meeting place of Valley Mountain Regional Center and its surrounding areas are still home to the Yokuts and Miwok people. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Why are we here today? These meetings are held across all 21 regional centers. We are meeting for lots of reasons, to understand, to learn. But for us, the first thing that we want to do at Valley Mountain is to present to you some data. That data will be information that we've gathered, information from the Department of Developmental Services, and sometimes it's information that we've gathered from working with our staff and our communities that we're serving. We want to share data based on lots of different factors. Maybe you'll think of more after this meeting. But we want to talk about people served by age, disability, ethnicity, language, where people choose to live, and the types of services that individuals use. We will highlight individual ethnicities and how some of those communities use services differently. It's also, this meeting is really important for us because we want to share with you some of the individual efforts we've had here at Valley Mountain to hopefully increase equity and reduce disparity. And finally, and most importantly, the purpose of this meeting is to listen to our community, and that means you. We are asking each of you, and Doug will share more details about this, but we are asking each of you to raise your voices, come up to the podium. If you want to sit where you are, that's okay too. If you would like to put your question in a chat, if you would like to email or put that question in a way that we can get it on Zoom, we're happy to raise that question on your behalf. In addition, we can also have that question posed by someone on staff, or we can unmute and you can raise it yourself. So part of this meeting and the intention that we have is to listen to some of your suggestions, your creative ideas, in ways that you think Valley Mountain can improve its service access and equity, but also just our efforts. This is not a concern that can simply be solved in a snap. It takes place over time. It requires the voices of many diverse people in our community. It's not just the individuals here. We know that we serve over 20,000 people in Valley Mountain Regional Center's catchment. We know that we have over 25 different identified languages, and there are many more that we know we have. The number of cultures and communities we serve over the 5 counties we have is incredibly diverse. And we know that all of these empty chairs represent many, many people that weren't able to be here with us tonight. So I'd like to just make sure that each of you recognize that not only is your voice important, but so many other individuals that aren't here today. So this is the beginning of the conversation. This isn't and shouldn't be just one night a year. My team just gave me a bad look, I know that. But it should be an ongoing opportunity of dialogue with all of you and with our team here at Valley Mountain. Next slide. I'll pass it to Doug.
I'm going to come up to the front for this. Hi, everybody. My name's Doug Bonet. I know most of you, but not all of you. And for those of you in the room, there's about 75 people online. And for those of you online, there's about, I don't know, 20 people in the room. So good crowd. Before we get on with the presentation, just wanted to go over a few things that us as VMRC staff wanted to come to an agreement with everybody who's at the meeting today. And the first one is to honor privacy and confidentiality. This is a public meeting. Like I said, we're probably going to get over the 100-person count. So just remember when you're sharing information, not to share anything sensitive that would break confidentiality with somebody. We really want you guys to give your statements, use I statements, talk about your own experiences as a parent or somebody receiving services. We want to make sure everybody has time that wants to speak, so we want to be respectful to everybody about time. And then it says expect and accept non-closure. There may be some things that are going on that aren't going to get solved just by us having this meeting today. So we want you to understand that and accept it. And we're committed to an ongoing dialogue outside of this meeting to get things done for you and your loved ones. And so that's all I had. I'll turn it back over to Leilani.
Thank you, Doug. Who are we? Valley Mountain represents 5 different counties that are significantly different. I personally was partially raised in Stanislaus County, part of the area that we serve. We serve 5 counties, 21,720 people. When I first started working at Valley Mountain Regional Center umpteen years ago, I won't say, there were less than 10,000 people served. It has increased significantly. That is for many different reasons, but we know that the individuals we serve, covering all 5 counties, are from the mountains, from the city, from agricultural communities, and everything in between. So we appreciate the opportunity to hear from as many different people as we can, and we know everybody has a different experience, a different lens by which they see our system, by also a lens by which their own families see our services. Offices we have located right now, we're here in Stockton, but we also have Modesto, San Andreas, and yes, opening soon will be the Tracy office. We've seen a significant increase in families and individuals served in our Tracy office. So I'm so thankf35 for my team for working to get that office open as soon as possible. VMRC employs 530 staff, 35 staff. Actually, it's growing every single day. That number last week was 530. So it continues to grow. And as we grow, that also requires us to continue training, to continue offering a number of different trainings, not only about our service system, but also about the number of different areas that we need to understand how to meet the needs of our families. That changes every single day. Our families want to have, and our individuals served want to have quality care and services that meet their needs and their choices. And employing 535 staff, we have to continually train and support those staff so that they have the tools in their toolbox to support the diverse needs of our families. As of June 2023, total VMRC funding was $338.9 million. And to date, the total amount spent is $317.8 million. That's fiscal year. So we have utilized quite a significant amount of funding closing to the fiscal year. Next slide, please. Staff diversity. One thing I'm incredibly proud of is my first week, I was able to go to 3 different Black History celebrations at 3 different offices. And what was particularly wonderful about that is just to meet so many staff that we don't have the opportunity to do so every day. Just giving you an overview of self-reporting staff identities. African American staff, we have 6%, Asian 14%. That's an incredibly diverse group of people. That certainly is not a single language, it's a multitude of languages there. Our Hispanic staff amount to 42%, white 33%, 2 or more, and other include, again, a number of individuals, for example, myself being Native Hawaiian. This is an important area because we have a number of different smaller languages and smaller groups that are reflected in the additional categories below. Languages spoken, we just had an internal language survey for regional center staff to self-identify, not just those that are paid a stipend for the languages that they speak, because those require often a particular training or a particular testing, but we're talking about everyone. You may be trained and speak a language, but you may not be able to take a test on the language. So what we're looking at is what capacity do you have? And in this survey recently, the highest spoken language with all of those surveys, which was about 350 staff approximately that responded, 72% identified as speaking Spanish of those who responded. 48% speak a language other than English of those who responded, and staff identified speaking over 17 languages. That's a pretty incredible number and data set. I think it's important that we celebrate the diversity of the people just at this table. The people sit at this table who speak a multitude of languages, who come from a variety of cultures and backgrounds. And I think recognizing that our staff reflect our community served is also an important aspect. Coming from my past experiences and working with community-based organizations, one of the things that comes up quite often is, do the staff hired understand my value system, my culture, my language, my community? That's a really important aspect of our service system. And so I just want to make sure that we celebrate the staff diversity that we have here at Valley Mountain and that we continue to push for. Next slide. And then I'd like to talk about people we serve, and I'll pass that over to Gabby. Oh yeah, number 10. Here, let me take number 10. So people served. There are 2 categories that we often highlight in our regional center system. First, people served by ethnicity and also by diagnosis. And I see many people taking camera shots, and if you weren't here, this will be posted on our website tomorrow, so you'll have it in both English and Spanish. I love your cameras. You can take pictures, but we'll also have it posted. So by ethnicity, you know, pie charts aren't that exciting, but what they do is they give you a quick reference 4, very quickly, our largest population served is Hispanic out of all of our community. If you look closer, we have 2 or more races. Those are individuals that are not specifically identifying in one community, but looking at multitudes of communities. If you look at our various population, African American, Asian is an incredibly diverse population as well, as I mentioned earlier. In the San Joaquin Valley, in the Central Valley, we have a number of Southeast Asian and Asian communities, and it's a really vibrant population that we have here. Valley Mountain alone, and Gabby's going to talk about this on the next slide, the diversity of languages that we serve. It's so important to recognize that people shouldn't be seen as a monolith, and the needs of communities shouldn't be captured in simply one direction, but we should look at them in all of the vibrant directions that the community may or may not need. And every community has diversity within that community. So this gives you an example or at least an illustration of our diverse ethnicities we serve. And then of course, by diagnosis, clearly you can see the number of areas autism is far surpassing others. Through the years, that was not the case, but as we know in the last decade, that autism has significantly increased as our primary area in diagnoses. Next slide. Gabby.
As Linani was saying, the diversity that we serve our clients with our language data, I mean, as you guys can see, it includes more than 25 languages. And I know we were not able to put all of them in here. It just was going to be a lot. But what do we do for some of the resources for these families who speak other languages? And so we do have the interpretation services to allow those families to have connection with the families. We now have the enhanced team, which is all of them speak Spanish. So we do have those services where the families can have access to their service coordinator. And we're trying also, to align those service coordinators with their families to speak the same languages.
Thank you, Gabby. It's so important. Language capacity at any regional center. It's critical that not only the staff, hopefully you have diversity in the staff capacity, but also that you have reliable and quality interpretation. We are fortunate. We have some amazing interpreters here today that are communicating in Spanish, but we also know that we have a number of other populations that are well over the 50 language mark or 60 or 70. And you can see by this illustration, Cambodian is 94. Cantonese and Mandarin together make up a higher number. Hmong and Laotian, you're talking about a number of families that have identified that speak this language. It's so critical that we not only have staff that speak the language, but when we don't, we have reliable interpretation that can be available as soon as possible. And that includes interpretation and translation of documents in an effective and quality manner. And that's a priority for this regional center, but personally, it's a priority for me. Language access and cultural competency are key components of the body of work that I've had in the last several years, and that will be a priority for this regional center. Next slide. And then just transitioning over to our spending data, we use different terms. Expenditures, purchase of service, those are all terms of art. Sometimes you just have to say it. It's how do you spend the dollars? Allocation is another fancy word for the money that we get from the state. But truly, this is about spending. How are we utilizing the dollars that are allocated or given to the department, from the department to the regional center? What do we spend that money on? I have 3 illustrations here that are in percent, and then we'll talk dollars in the next one. It's hard to make these things, these illustrations, as easy as possible to understand. My hope is that with your input over time, we can find even easier ways to do this. But for me, the easy piece was to say, here are a couple of examples where you have a significant difference between utilization. So for respite expenditures, respite, that's a break for a family. Someone living in the family home. I have a brother served by Alta Regional Center. My dad requires respite as an aging caregiver. that is an important resource for my family, and that is utilized in different communities differently. So for example, we see the Hispanic community utilizes respite at a higher rate than other communities. But if you look at the overall population, then what you'll see is the Black or African American community. In our community, that was approximately 7 to 8%. They're utilizing it about at the same rate as their population. In the Asian community, again, a very diverse population. It's difficult to say any one way to look at the Asian community because it's so incredibly diverse. But when you compare different service types, for example, a new service type is personal assistance services. We have many different utilizers. And if you look here, you have our Hispanic community utilizing this service on a higher area, but you also have it for our white or Caucasian families are utilizing it at a high rate as well. And then across, you have our Asian, Black, African American community using it somewhat similar to respite. If you look over at day program expenditures, you can see day program services. Those are particular service codes, but it's essentially day programs. You see our white families utilizing that service, or at least that type of service, at a much higher rate than our other communities. Again, does this tell me everything that I need to know about how a particular culture or a particular community might appreciate or utilize our services? No, but it does tell you that people utilize services differently. It does say that how you choose and the services you choose for your family reflect differently based on different communities. I'm not going to tell you every reason why. I just know as a Native Hawaiian woman and being raised in a Native Hawaiian family that there are certain values and expectations that my family had to care and basically to support my brother. His disability or his diagnosis is Down syndrome. Across the spectrum, you can have individuals that have very different life experiences based on that disability. I'm not going to pretend to say that what my family chose or chooses for my brother and what my brother chooses for himself are the same at what every other Polynesian or Native Hawaiian might. But I can definitely say to you that people access and choose services differently. Next slide, please. Digging a little deeper into respite, this gives you the numbers. We should have put the dollar sign, so forgive me for that. We'll add that to it. But this digs a little deeper. Instead of percentages, this tells you by the numbers on the expense or the spending that VMRC had based on a particular community. So it kind of gives you a quick illustration. And again, this presentation will be available on our website, so you can always go back and analyze more. Next slide, please. Personal assistance services. Again, looking at spending and looking at it across the board from different community perspectives. This is a relatively new service. I think as more people become aware of the type of service this is, offering families flexibility to utilize in the home that otherwise would not have been available to them, this will be a service that I guarantee you will go higher and higher for our communities of color. I do believe that many of our communities are used to maybe just respite, right? Because they say, that's all I know. I only know respite. But that's why you're all here today. Because what you're here to do is to get the word out that personal assistance service is another opportunity for families to have a different type of service in the family home. That does not mean that it's only respite or only, personal assistance. It means that it's another option. We're not trying to say that this is the one you need, but we're trying to offer more diversity in the services that are offered. And I would make this a whole community meeting where you can just talk right now, but we'll get to you and you'll be able to raise up your voices. But this gives an example of a new service. And look at the growth you see in different areas. Multicultural families are utilizing this service at a much higher rate than you will see in other areas, right? Next slide, please. I wanted this slide because I wanted people to see that approved spending compared to actual spending. And we're going to get into those tall bar charts and if you break those down by residence, age, things like that, you'll see differences. But I wanted to give you a sense of people that are approved for service and people that actually utilize the service. So many people are approved for services, like for example, respite, you're approved for 20 hours or 40 hours a month and you use 10. It may be because you're on vacation. It may be because your family isn't utilizing a particular service that month. But when you measure for all of these across every single one of these ethnicities, the average goes between 22% and 28%. It's not that different. Whether you are, for example, there's a difference for the African-American and our Black communities, it's about a 22% difference. But if you're in the Native Hawaiian, for example, it's around 28% difference. That's a small little box. But if you look at white, it's 24%, and Asian, it's 25%. And I'm talking about the difference between utilization and approved services, okay? So this is low or no POS. Sometimes people compare those two. I wanted this chart, and my CFO, Melissa, was working on it for me. But what I'm trying to illustrate here is there are many areas where families kind of across the board relatively equally sometimes don't use all their services. That doesn't mean they're not necessarily offered. It means they may even be approved, but for lots of reasons, they don't utilize them. At the regional center, our focus is to have each and every one of our families utilize every service that's approved, right? But when it's not and people aren't using it, we need to understand why. That might be working with some of you. That might be working with an advocate or understanding more from a family member. It might just simply be asking the individual with the disability why. Why aren't you using it? What can we do to make that access and utilization better? And so these are some of the things I'm illustrating because it's not significantly different based on your particular ethnicity or culture, but why may be different. Does that make sense? The reason why may be different. So we have to still dig a little deeper and find out more why. Next slide. These next 3 slides are really intended to show you something slightly different. It's based on where people live, okay? So people living in a family home, like my brother, like where some members here in this room have a loved one with a developmental disability living in their home. So living with a family member doesn't necessarily mean your child. It could be your sibling. It could be, living in a family home, you can look at average cost per person, right? How much services you're actually using in the home and what that total cost might be. So for example, an area, a total $82.6 million. That's total cost. And living in the family home are 2 types of services, personal assistance and an in-home, like an in-home respite worker, someone coming in the home. So those 2 services, the total is $82.6 million. Follow me here. I was not the best math student, but I do know how to talk about some of this stuff. So if we look at our Hispanic families at 39.3 and we look at our white families at 15.5, you see a difference. But does that mean because more or less are served in one place or another? But look at the number. The number of people served at each of those areas impacts obviously what the total cost would be. So you have to kind of look at all 3 of these slides together, and we can come back because Doug knows how to go back and forth on slides. So living in the family home, try to remember this number, 39.3 and 15.5 and 9.9, right? So go to the next slide. The next slide is living in residential settings, and look how different it is. So for our Caucasian or white families, 102.7 million for living in residential facilities. That is, look at the number, 922 people live in residential facilities. That's almost close to 3.5 times that those are from our Hispanic community. Our African-American community, 173. But then if you can look at our lower populations, but the numbers shouldn't deceive you because we have much lower populations of our indigenous and our native people, okay? So don't spend too much time on looking at those numbers. But what I'm saying is the difference that you see in the high cost of spending, and then look at the bottom, 189 million just for residential placement. That includes all residential settings living outside of the family home. So the spending is going to be much higher if you're living out of home, right? Can you go to the next slide? I'm having you guys remember math, but remember the slide's going to be posted. Now, those living independently, what does this mean? This means you have to have your own home. What's the cost of housing in California? You don't have to answer that. We know what that is. So for people economically, you have to be able to afford to live out of the family home if you want to access supported living services. That's only for people living in the out of home. So when you look at this data, there's lots of implications you can make, and I'm not going to try to pretend to understand why many more people in certain communities have more access, but there's other things that impact this particular service delivery. Housing, your ability to afford housing. If you're living in the Central Valley, people say, oh, it's much cheaper to live in the Central Valley. We're like, what? For those of us who live here. But if you compare that to San Francisco, Los Angeles, San Diego, and some of those counties, it's significantly more, but it's like anything else. It's still expensive to live anywhere in California. So if you can't afford a home of your own, then you don't qualify for supported living. That's a fact. That's a statutory fact. Certain services are available to individuals who live in certain residential settings. So if you look at this, 643 people in our catchment are able to live independently and get access to independent living services, SSP restoration, those two services. So when you look and you compare things, you can't solely look at things flatly. You have to look at comparative where people live. I know this is a lot to take in. It takes a lot even for me to think about these things. I just want us to look at the data and understand the differences if you choose or if you are able to live in certain residential settings, the services that are available to you are different. And we'll have time to talk more about that in a minute. Next slide. What have we done to increase equity? There are lots of things we have still yet to do, but some of the things I wanted to share, and some of these individuals are here with us tonight. VMRC staff focus on increasing service access and equity. First of all, regional centers didn't have a number of these staff just 4 years ago. There was no such thing. It was, you might have had an outreach coordinator. You might have had someone who spoke, bilingual, a bilingual staff that might have been designated for these things. But a cultural specialist manager, that is new. You are seeing managers. That means building capacity and a number of staff focused on equity efforts. And we have that in Gabby. A multilingual access specialist, someone in Spanish designated. We have that in Evelyn. Having an enhanced case management team. We have that posse over there. We have Jose. We have a number of staff here that represent an enhanced case management team. Our benefits coordinator to support access to generic resources. Is that solely? Yes. And is that solely for people of color? No. But it's an area that helps our communities of color get access to services that ordinarily there might be additional supports that are needed in a language they understand. We are still in recruitment for, and I did put a link down there to vmrc.net so that those of you who might be interested in applying or who know someone that might be interested in applying, that you do. We are hiring for a deaf service coordinator, a multilingual access specialist focused with ASL capacity and skill set, a deaf specialist focused in this particular area. We're also looking for an outreach and engagement specialist. It's not just outreach, right? It's engaging communities. The old idea of just doing the outward work and not doing the in work and not doing the equality connecting work, that's a little different. The old models of going out and putting your brochures at a table, that's not enough, people. We know that's not enough. we know that we have to engage with people. So we not only hear their voices, they hear ours, and then we listen to each other. Engagement requires us to do a lot more than just translating a document. It's helping people to understand it. It's walking people through processes that can be very difficult if you speak another language or if you're new to this country or to this system. So the work that we're trying to do is to build capacity internally with staffing, but these aren't the only staff that matter. It's the other pieces that we're doing. And if we can go to the next slide, Doug, I'm going to pass this over to Gabby.
Sorry, I forget. I have to turn the mic off. VMRC efforts to improve language access and cultural competency. Well, we have done over 50 plus VMRC outreach and activities in all 5 counties. So we have a team that is dedicated to do that. And believe me, we try to be out there. We have increased our language access and also new technology of each of our offices. I mean, having our monitors in the lobbies where we can display information and updates for families as they wait for their IPP meeting or any appointment that they might have in our offices. And we just recently, which I'm very excited, got new headsets for translation, for interpretation, hired linguistically competent staff dedicated to our Spanish translation, which I think is very important. And increase the early start and intake staff with linguistic competence staff. So those are just some of the many things that we're and efforts that we're doing. We can go to the next slide, Doug. And with that, you know, we have the enhanced team, enhanced service coordination, and it's a one-on-one support, you know, and this team not only meets once a year for their annual IPP meeting, but they meet on a quarterly basis, and they're focused on educating families. They participate also in a lot of our, I'm sorry, and the efforts for this team is really to increase the access and services for individuals of diverse communities with a low to no purchase. The enhanced team, just one of the things that that we have, and most of them are here today, they all speak Spanish. So having that direct connection with your families and your team, it's really important. The enhanced team, currently we have 5 service coordinators. You know, and we also host the outreach and engagement outreach events. So a lot of times you guys will see the team out in the community, and I know that a lot of them are now well known in the community because that's part of the efforts that they do. And really the goal for the enhanced coordination team is to increase POS and in the regional center, especially for our families here in VMRC.
Enhanced service coordinators, before we get to Claire, this was a very different type of model. It was intended to give people more time to get to know their families, to have the capacity and the skill set to support a family with significant needs. It doesn't solely mean that it's just about the language piece. It's also about having the opportunity to build a relationship of trust with a lower caseload. When you have 80 people or 90 people, you're not able to have the same time if they speak another language or they have significant needs in areas. So this funding was an opportunity to have each regional center have the capacity to have some smaller caseloads to support families with other needs that are areas that we felt really needed more support. So families will cycle on and will come off. They'll build that capacity, then they'll, you know, come off of the caseload and they'll add new families. It's a really terrific opportunity for families to get comforted as they begin in the regional center, or even for those that have had struggles, have the opportunity to work with senior staff that speak their language and can support them. So I really want to give kudos to the enhanced case management team. And now to you, Claire.
Thank you, Lainani. So we're sharing here to you guys the Family Wellness Project. It says there it's a pilot project. What that means is that it is here we're able to do this because of a grant, and that grant came from what we call the American Rescue Plan Act. I wanted to highlight this part here where there's different diverse individuals here participating in our activities. I wanna point out that when we were beginning this project, we actually had stakeholder meetings or community partner meetings, and I see our community partners here nodding and collaborated with Gabby, asking for the contact information, because what we really wanted to do with this is not just to go out there and tell the community that, hey, we have a project and we're here to help you and this is how we're going to help you. No, we don't want that. What we want to do is to partner with the community. We want to tell them that, hey, we're here. We have the capacity to help. How can we help you? Tell us how we can help you, because we know and we acknowledge that you are the expert in your situation and you know the best way to help you. So that's how we have approached this project, listening to the community and answering the call and the need of the community. So all in all, family wellness is really based on having counseling, free counseling for our families. We made this in such a way that everybody in the family will be able to participate in that counseling. Now, we also acknowledge and understand that not all families will be at the same level. Some families will only have one family member who is ready to go to counseling. Some will have two. Some will probably have more than that. So we didn't limit this to the member of the family. We actually expanded it to, if you have extended families, grandma, aunts, uncles, cousins who want to participate, helping our consumers who are age 0 to 5, you are welcome to come to the counseling. Now, if only one member right now is ready, and then all throughout the time while you're having the counseling session, one or two of the family members become ready, they can join, they can come. We don't limit it because we want to make sure we serve everyone in the family. And we acknowledge that, yeah, this is primarily for our families with kids or consumers 0 to 5, the families that we serve. And so we wanted to make sure that we also have a way to support families with older kids who are also undergoing challenges, you know? So we have also, as part of the family wellness, the parent or peer support groups. We have that, and that's not limited to families of children 0 to 5. Anyone can come to our parent support groups. This is one of the things also that we didn't reinvent the wheel. We listened to our community partners who told us, you just need to partner with us. You don't need to create your own group. And so we did. We supported them. We're promoting them. We see some of our partners here that we have collaborated. So that's how we are doing that. And another thing that I wanted to emphasize here is when you look at this pie chart, I know, again, pie charts are not fancy and exciting, as Lainani has mentioned. We try to serve diverse communities. The diverse community that we have here, in order to make sure that they are able to access services, especially mental health. Majority of the families that we serve here are Hispanic or Latino. We also have some white or Caucasian, and then a few of our Asian and Black African American, which is representative of our community, the VMRC community that we serve, right? So that is what it is. The other graph there that we're showing, throughout this counseling process, we want to know, we want to have an objective measure to see, is it really helping our families, or are we just assuming it's helping the families? So to those families that have agreed for us to help measure, we have measured that, and one of the tools that we used is what we call depression, anxiety, stress scale. So this is trying to look and see the level of psychological distress that the family has before they started counseling, which is the first bar, the blue one. And then after their sessions of counseling, what happened? It has went down. So that's your orange bar there. So it is showing that when we use standardized tools to measure their depression, their anxiety, their stress level, it does show that it has helped. The program has helped them significantly in that aspect. And then next slide. There are other outcomes that we wanted to measure. One of them is the couple's relationship. But then we found out as we were doing this that not all of our families are in a good relationship as a couple. Some are divorced, some are single parents, some are in the process of divorce. And so the standardized tool that we use is not really catching that. So we decided to look at other data and see, are we going to be able to see if there's even an improvement in their couples relational functioning as a couple for those that are couples? So you can see here when we served our various race and ethnicity families, we have here that all those blue bars, they have improved their relationship, particularly our Black and African community family here. Those that used to have conflict because they probably are in the process of divorce and they are estranged and they don't talk to each other as much. After the counseling, they have better relationship with each other. It doesn't mean they're together, but they have a better relationship, you know? So that's part of the conflict mediation there that you see down there, which significantly has improved our families in Hispanic families. So that's really amazing. And then the co-parenting. Some of the families, they just co-parent, they're not really together, but still it's showing, especially in our Asian families, it has definitely improved their relationships with regards to co-parenting. Before I forget, when I mentioned the counseling, I do want to point out that our counselors, we wanted to make sure we serve you in your own language. So we do have counselors that are Spanish speaking so that the families are not having a hard time expressing themselves and not feeling awkward having a third person there, you know, as an interpreter. But we do have, I think, 1 or 2 families who preferred to have in person and an interpreter. And so we have provided interpreters in those instances. But majority of our Spanish speaking families have Spanish speaking counselors that are helping them.
Thank you so much, Claire, and thank you for your dedication on this project. It's not just a project. It's about how Valley Mountain is trying to be as responsive to the needs of our families, the whole person. It's not just, again, one service, one program, one project. It's everything in between. So thank you, Claire. Now going over to Gabby, and we are going to wrap up in a couple of minutes to give as much time as we can for all of you to offer comments, questions, tidbits, advice, suggestions, and everything in between. So I'm going to have Gabby do this pretty quickly, and then we're going to open it up. Hey, Gabby.
Yeah, so we really wanted to show some of the things that we're doing. So for example, a lot of our outreach events that we've been doing through our LAC, which is the Language Access and Cultural Competency funding that we got. We've been able to meet with diverse leaders and out in the community. But also we've been able to do partnerships with some of our CBOs. And as you can see in the slide, we do collaborate with some of our CBOs that are actually here present today. ICC is here. Marisa Escucha Mi Voz is here. And part of that is collaborating and, you know, trying to meet. So I know, for example, with ICC, we have an upcoming cafecito with Marisa. One of the things that we're wanting to do is do our POS in Spanish with collaboration. So we wanted to show you some of the things that we do out with the community, but I'm going to hand it out to Linani now.
Okay. And our last slide, I promise you, you won't have to hear anymore. Well, maybe you will, but steps VMRC is taking to increase equity. Like I said, it's steps. They're baby steps, they're adult steps, they're everything in between. But some of the things that we're doing, we've mentioned a little bit, but I think it's really important that utilizing our language access and cultural competency funding, it is just that. it's utilizing this funding in the community. So there is a very high chance that a number of you at least already have worked with us, but we're going to continue to reach to our community partners to raise awareness by offering a listening session. Today is somewhat of a listening session, but to talk in a language, in a natural environment with a native language speaker there, our focus is to understand more about what people need. Today is some of that, but when you have a listening session, you have some smaller group individuals, you have some leaders, and you're together with native speakers that are able to have topical areas and conversations. That's really important to me, that we're not just talking to people, we're listening to people, and we're having conversations about what we need to do to make things better. Developing website enhancements, we're doing that. We're noticing that in some website enhancement, that it's not necessarily the quality that we're always wanting to see. So we're making some adjustments to improve. Improving interpretation audio technology, it seems simple, but having high quality technology makes a difference. The one thing we hear often is that, well, maybe that wasn't really a great interpretation, or maybe I didn't have that. I was off. I didn't quite hear it in the same way. We're really trying to honor language accessibility and make sure that we have this information and the tools that we need to make it more accessible at all of our public meetings. So that's something that we recently have just ordered and have that on the way. Develop new multilingual resources. That means in multiple languages. That doesn't just mean in Spanish, although that's our highest spoken language. We have a number of other populations, as you saw earlier, that speak a number of Southeast Asian languages, that speak a lot of variety of Indian languages that we have in our community. So we want to make sure that we're responsive to all of those. And we want to do so in a culturally competent, quality way. Expanding meaningful outreach engagement to the Native American community. We'll be working in partnership with some Native American leaders and doing some of this work in our foothills. This is, of course, about intake, eligibility, and assessment, our Native Indigenous babies all the way up to adults. So my hope is that a number of those engagements will be, hopefully we'll get them done by this summer. But beginning that engagement is so exciting, and it's so fun to bring and to support those efforts here at Valley Mountain. And then, of course, increasing implicit bias training for all staff. That is one of the tools in the toolbox, right? Understanding where your biases are. We all have them. The question is, are those biases impacting the way we are serving and supporting our families? So that is one of the areas. Does it magically change bias? No. But it does offer us the opportunity to learn more about who we are, to learn more about what tools we can use to change those biases. So these are some of the steps Valley Mountain has. There's certainly plenty more. We tried to make sure we could honor time today. And I will go to the last slide. And this is your questions, your ideas, your input. I would welcome and open it up to those. And I'd like to have this next hour. We do have interpreters and our ASL interpreter here until 6 o'clock. So we'd like to be able to give people the opportunity to come up to the podium and speak. If you don't want to, you can speak from your chair, but we might have to repeat your comment here on the microphone. Sure.
Oh, we already have, you want to start with in the room first? Because I know we have a lot of, Dora, you had your hand up. Did you want to come to the, or did? Here.
So Dora, just so you know what we said in the beginning, we're going to give people a couple of minutes. So we'll ask you to give a couple of minutes of your questions or comments, and then we're going to pass it around, and then we'll come back to you. So if you'd like to, you can begin.
I just want to start with, I got really excited when you said you were going to provide, did I hear certificated translators for our meetings? What is going to be, you said you're going to have a higher level of translation. So what does that mean? Will they be certified? Will they be?
No, I'm not sure if you understood that, but when regional center staff get basically a stipend for the work that they do, Those are regional center staff that take very specific tests in order to do that. That's what I was referencing. For purposes of translators we work with an agency that has requirements for their translators, and we rely on that. But we also want to rely on people like you, advocates in the community, that are able to say, that translator wasn't great. What we've done at Valley Mountain is we've also built capacity internally. Not only do we have Evelyn and we have other staff that are working to support families, but this isn't a court system, but we are trying to do our best to make sure that the interpretation that we have is quality in the translation as well.
Yes, I just wanted to offer that the county provides some kind of certificate for translation, and they're used at the schools.
Wonderful. Thank you.
So that would be a good resource to
Thank
look
you
for that. My questions are kind of different in different areas. So can I continue, or did you want me to go back to me?
Yeah.
Okay, you had a list of, if you can go back to the list of new positions that you have, or positions that have been here and we don't know about. And I just wanted to ask about those positions. Are those administrative positions? The list of the specialists?
Are you talking about the multilingual specialists?
All of the ones you had on the screen, actually. You had a few.
Can you go back to slide 20?
Yeah, it's hard to ask the questions when the slides are not.
Yeah, sure.
There.
Yeah.
Are these administrative positions, or I know the cultural specialist manager, is that different from the cultural specialist? Only because I'm trying to figure out the role that Gabi plays. I know she's in the enhanced team case management.
So Gabby now manages that staff. So when you're talking about as a role as a manager, she's overseeing each of these positions and this enhanced team. Yes.
Okay.
And the multi-axis specialist, that's Evelyn. So you already know Evelyn, I think, maybe
No,
not.
I don't think we know Evelyn.
Evelyn, can you say hello?
Okay, Evelyn then is the multilingual access specialist.
Well, she's the multilingual access specialist we have in Spanish. We'll be hiring someone who speaks American Sign Language for the other position.
So these are all under Gabi then? Cultural specialist, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, that was what was, they sounded like different positions, and there was nobody that, so Gabi is the only administrator under these, and these positions are under her. I'm just trying to figure out the roles.
Well, not all the positions that are in recruitment, the deaf service coordinator and the multilingual access specialist, no. Okay. But the positions for the multilingual access specialist and enhanced case management are under Gabi. Okay. And Chris, you can always say the benefits coordinator, where will that position be under? With Gabi too. Okay, good.
So she is fairly new, Dora, the benefits coordinator. And so she just been here for about a week. So yeah, you guys haven't met her yet. Her name is Victoria. She actually is helping us walking people to the board.
We can introduce her in a little bit, just to make sure you meet her.
She would be key to a lot of our families because we have a difficult time with generic services.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I can
Thank you, Dora.
On. You're welcome.
I really appreciate that. I appreciate the county link too. I think that's always good to build quality and making sure that we have quality interpretation. I invite people to provide feedback when you are in meetings, and we do hire. I mean, we hire, staff who speak multitude of languages, but if you don't tell us that quality is not as good as it should be, we won't know. So I particularly appreciate you sharing that, whether it's here or on an offline or sending me an email too, Dora. Thank you. We can circle back with you, Dora. I'll give you more time. Others in the room? Yes.
Buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Griselda Estrada.
Good afternoon. My name is Griselda Estrada.
Y a mí me gustaría preguntar si estamos o no estamos en disparidad y qué etnia es la que está en disparidad.
And I would like to ask if we are or not in disparity and which ethnicity is in disparity.
¿Y qué proyecto hay para ayudar?
And what kind of project there is to help.
If I understand you right, you're looking for a blanket overview of disparity. And the word disparity is somewhat deceiving because it's a general word that overlooks all services. What I tried to show today is that there are distinct differences between how people choose services for themselves. So in respite, I shared respite and personal assistance services that our Hispanic community utilizes those services at the highest rates. But if you look at day services or residential placement, those services are utilized by our Caucasian or white families at the most. So when you ask about the word disparity, the question is in what? If there's a particular service type, then we can dig deeper and look at that service. And we need to sometimes, Griselda. I absolutely agree because sometimes it's some areas of service families could really benefit from, but they don't know enough about, so they don't choose it. So what I'm saying to you is not that there isn't disparity in service, but the question is you can't solely look at the totality of service because that doesn't actually tell you how people are accessing or what they're maybe not getting or receiving. If you look at the total amount of services, and I think we had that slide, you will see that our Caucasian or white families have a higher use of service, but the highest cost service is residence and day programs. So it's a more difficult question than just saying, where is there disparity? Is there disparity? Yes. I can admit that to you today in my first POS meeting at VMRC as the executive director. The question is it in all areas or in the same for every community? And it is not. If you look at a particular service type, you can pull out that it may be in that particular area, in that particular county, it might be the least used by, say, the African-American community. But the Hmong community may use a service in one county higher than the other. When you ask about the word disparity, you're talking about, is there a difference between the way two different communities based on race or ethnicity utilize or access a service? That will always be yes. The question is, how do we make it more equitable so that all families have the menu? They understand what those services are, and they feel comfortable and have the ability to ask for those services from their service coordinator, right? So what we want to do is make sure all of those pieces work. People feel comfortable in asking for personal support services in their IPP, that they know what it means in their native language, that they have the ability to talk and understand more about what their loved one or what they might need for their own family. And it's also an opportunity to say, I don't like any of it. My mom used to say that all the time. I don't know what the regional center provides. I don't know if I like any of that stuff. Mom, they don't provide some of the things you're looking for, but let's think about what are the things that you might like. She didn't really understand what all the services were. She's a woman born and raised in Hawaii. They're very different service delivery, very different service options. But our job at the regional center is to make sure that we are sharing and educating and supporting families and understanding what we have to offer. And that comes with time. We have a lot of new staff that we're hiring, and I know that I'm going to push Brian and Chris and Tara and everybody else on the team to do their best to try to educate people on what the services are and how our families should have access to those services. But it is not perfect, Griselda. If it is, then I'd be lying to you. The question is, can we be closer to getting services to our families? And, you know, this is one of the conversations we have. It doesn't just have to be tonight, but disparity exists in healthcare. It exists in the regional center system. But how we address those is in meetings like this, is in conversations that we have in our team meetings. It's in conversations that we have in our board meetings. Watch, our board meetings are going to have a lot more public people now. All right. And then we're going to have more conversations in places that we might feel uncomfortable. I can promise to you that for me, having a conversation about things that aren't working is comfortable for me. I spent a lot of years as a client's rights advocate, and I'm comfortable with raising challenges in our team as well as in our community. So I encourage you to reach not only to me, but to members of my team to understand more. And if we can't figure it out, we're going to try. So others in the room? Maritza?
Thank you.
Mhm.
First, I just want to welcome here. And also, I'm going to talk about, there are some issues that really affect, the people that I work with and that represent over here too. So, but I'm so happy and excited just to hear what are you planning to do, because this is the biggest problem that I think that we coming here, not only me, many members of the Escuchen Mi Voz group too. So it's that we don't have that enough, staff with cultural linguistic competences. So, and this is we need a lot. So, because of this create a lot of frustration for families when we have the English barrier that we cannot able to communicate in an effective way. So this is it's been affected a lot. So, and I'm so excited just to hear that you've been hiring more staff with cultural and linguistic competences. So this is, I think, is be a really good way to address many of the issues that we have right now as a Latin families.
And Maritza, if you know people that are looking, www.vmrc.net.
Yeah.
This is, we don't want to hide that secret. We need people with linguistic competencies. We need people with cultural competency and that have experience from different vantage points. So thank you, Maritza. I appreciate that comment. I also think that it's work. It's getting input from the community to help us figure out where are we missing the boat, where are we missing the mark. We are going to make mistakes. I know it's impossible to think that we would, but we will. And we are going to work in every way we can with our community partners to try to figure out ways that we can do better. It's one way for us to find, services and supports that help our families. Sometimes we need to even figure out ways to share that information better and more effectively. And we're going to need your help in doing that too.
Oh, thank you. We are here, to work and collaborate and try to help the families as much as we can. And also one of the other points that you say that you're gonna train the services coordinators. So this is another big issue that I think we have a lot of concerns. So, and also to explain, in a culturally way, about the services.
Yeah.
So I like a lot.
Are you volunteering?
These ideas.
I think you're volunteering. Where's Bud? So just so my HR director knows, we have a volunteer from the community willing to touch with our new employee orientation. I think that's a great idea. Write that down. I'm writing it down myself.
So we were going to talk with my staff too. So but I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Great ideas.
Muy buenas tardes a todos.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Gracias por invitarnos a ser parte de esta presentación. Mi nombre es Francisca Vargas y yo realmente tengo poco tiempo viniendo con mis nietos. Yo estoy a cargo, cuidando a mis nietos ahorita y apenas tengo 1 año y medio.
Thank you so much for inviting us here tonight. My name is, can you repeat, ¿puede repetir su nombre de nuevo?
Francisca Vargas.
Francisca Vargas, and I am taking care of my 2 grandsons, you said, dijo?
Sí,
Muy bien.
nietos. Y pues pertenezco al grupo de las mamás de Escuchen Mi Voz.
I belong to the group of moms of Escucha Mi Voz.
Tenemos conversaciones, nos juntamos para un café y ahí es donde escuchamos comentarios, quejas, ¿verdad? Y creo que estamos aquí para ver la manera de que ustedes puedan mejorar los servicios que tienen, porque son buenos, ¿verdad? Pero siempre habrá una manera de mejorarlos.
And I am part of the group of moms who gather under Escucha Mi Voz for coffee, where we share, where we about the complaints, we make comments.
Can I come
Puedo
too?
ir yo también.
Pregúntele a la coordinadora.
You will have to ask a coordinator. But this is where we share, because I think you guys have good services, but it needs to be better.
Y una sugerencia que yo tengo para ustedes.
And a suggestion that I have for you guys.
Usted ha mencionado que habrá una mejor preparación para las coordinadoras.
You have mentioned that it will be a better training for the coordinators.
Cuando una de las sugerencias es cuando ofrecen los servicios para los que califican las familias.
When you offer, sorry. So one of the suggestions is when they offer the services for those who the families qualify for.
Algunas son 3 mis nietos, los 3 son clientes del centro.
Okay, so 3 of my grandsons are clients of VMRC.
Y cuando ofrecen los servicios, no todas me lo han explicado de la manera en que uno lo pudiera entender mejor.
Not all of the times they have explained the services to me in a way that I can understand them in a better way.
Por ejemplo, cuando ofrecen las horas de respiro, quizás sean un poco más explícitas en decir quiénes, cómo y con quién podrían estar nuestros niños.
For example, when they explain respite, we would like to know how, when, and where, or who can be with our kids.
Y yo le aseguro que ese porcentaje que ustedes tienen, donde dicen, estas familias califican para que ustedes nos presentaron, estas familias califican para este servicio y estas son las que lo agarran, el porcentaje de las que lo agarran, le aseguro que va a subir.
And I can assure you that that percentage, that number that you showed us from the families who qualify for it versus who utilizes it will go up.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Un comentario más
Thank you.
también
And another comment too.
sobre los intérpretes que vienen por fuera,
About the interpreters that are from the outside.
que nos acompañan a los IPP.
That come with us to the IPP meetings.
Gracias a Dios, a mí me tocó un excelente intérprete.
Thank God I got an excellent interpreter.
Pero sí he escuchado mamás que quisieran o que le pongan una coordinadora en español o que le cambiaran de intérprete.
But I do heard of moms who have asked for a coordinator that speaks Spanish or to change interpreters.
Gracias por la oportunidad.
Thanks for the opportunity.
I thank you for the comments. They're so valuable. The quality of our interpretation and how well the families are working with a particular interpreter. I love hearing that because we're paying for that service. We want to have the most qualified, the most, I think, quality interpreters that we can. And so if you're a coffee group, I'll come to it. I'll crash that coffee group. But if you have concerns, I want you to raise those. And if you have a good interpreter, I want you to share that with us too, because those are names that we might recommend that we use more often than not. We also have contracts. And if interpretation's not quality, as a regional center, we might want to look at those contractors and say, where are we missing? Why aren't we getting the quality interpreters we need? And we might need to be looking and closer at those contracts. So I'm happy to look at those things if they're not going well. So there's a whole body, to interpretation and translation that we know of, and coming from the state, I know of. So I think it's always important to hear from you on if that service is working for you or not. Thank you. Thank you for those comments and suggestions.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for this. I have a question. Well, I got a couple of questions. One is, what is the regional center's plan for case finding in the homeless shelters? We have populations there. We have individuals there they've been identified. They're in the system and somehow they fall through the crack, but we don't have any real connection with the regional center. And I'm imagining if it's happening at St. Mary's, it's happening in other homeless shelters as well. So I was just working with someone today who's actually homeless. They have a service coordinator and they don't really have the direction that they need to get placed somewhere residential. So we're trying to coordinate with them. And then with us, it's like nobody knows about the regional center. When you're out in the community and you say the regional center, they do not know what you're talking about, that place, that thing. It's very complex. And how do we, going forward, are there plans for opening it up where folks in the community can come out and present to you and show you some of these challenges that we see every day?
Thank you, Tambora. I appreciate that. You know, our homeless population continues in various areas, including in San Joaquin, Stanislaus, and other areas, all 5 of our counties. It's a statewide area of grave concern, as we all know. It's also an area that was one of the areas of focus in language access and cultural competency funding. So there is space and room to utilize some of those funds to address areas in our homeless community and getting access to our service system. Now, that does not mean necessarily that it's an easy fix, because there's lots of reasons why individuals who you know, someone who served in our system, but then there are a number of other individuals who may be adults, maybe children, and getting those services. So I don't have an answer for you tonight. I think that's a really good and important question for our community. Is there some resource that we can use in that area that's a little bit different than what we've had in the past? Yes. Some regional centers are focused in this space, and I think that they are great resources for us to tap into, much larger populations and areas that they're working with, but they're working in partnership with a number of different organizations to help with those services. So I don't have a perfect answer for you tonight, but I can say it's an area of concern, certainly for me, and I know my team. So I would be looking forward to having a conversation with you more about this.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I had one other question, and it's probably more along the lines of service utilization versus the expenditures. And this is something that I encountered recently. A lot of times what happens is services, when you do the IPP, the day of the IPP, that may be the actual date that the service start date starts. But the services don't actually start until you get the agreed upon services. And sometimes that can move down. It could be a month or 2 or 3 or 4. It could, you know, so it'll look like you have these services for X amount of dollars. Say you have a $10,000 expenditure based on you started services today at this IPP because you signed off on it, but you don't get services for 90 to 120, 160 days whenever you start them. And then it looks like you're not using the services because they haven't even been identified yet.
Thank you, Tambora. I think you raise an issue about the types of services and availability. I mean, having the available service provider, I think, is always a challenge. It's a challenge for all 21 centers. It's not an excuse, it's a reality. Having service providers working for the rates that we currently have, working in environments, particularly in our rural communities, we sometimes don't have the options that we do in other areas. But I think you raise an important question, that the delay in the service provider or getting that service provider on board can cause, obviously, a delay in utilization. So I appreciate raising that. That's an important factor we're always considering. So, you know, that's something that I know for us, not only service provider training, it's not even the training piece. It's even having someone that can provide the service, and that can be challenging, even for respite. Even looking for a particular provider that speaks your language, a respite provider that speaks your language. I often heard this from our community-based organizations in the Mandarin and Cantonese speaking communities. We need more providers, that actually speak our language. And that's, that's about DSP Collaborative, that's about, DSP University and so many other programs that we're trying to give people the idea that building and being part of this system that you can have a career. I started as a day service. I started as a direct care service provider in college. It's where I started. So a reminder, people, you can start in direct services and you can end up coming up through a regional center as an advocate and through the state, and you can wind up here. So it is an area of great need for us. And having the people to provide the service that do the hard work in the community is something that's a priority for us. So we're going to continue to work on the DSP Collaborative and try to find ways where we can make sure our system is fortified with the people that we need. Because at the end of the day, if we authorize a service, or long and short, we say you can have so many hours of respite, of PAS, or whatever it is, you've got to have the provider to do the service. We authorize you to, for supported living, but you got to have the supported living provider to do the service, which is what I was. These are the kinds of areas that aren't simply just a solution and problem that we can solve. It's a problem that often requires us to work outside of our regional center, requires us to work with, the state. It requires us to work with our community partners and service providers. So I don't think that's a perfect answer for you, Timbora. I just think it's the reality that it's a complex area that we need to continue to dive into. So thank you for your advocacy on it.
Well, thank you. I respect the fact that you're at least trying to communicate about it.
Well,
that's worth a lot.
We'll see.
All
Thank
right.
you. Thank you, Timbora. We're at the 30-minute mark, people. So we have 30 minutes left.
Right. Hello, my name is Colleen Yoder. I am the current Clients' Rights Advocate for the Office of Client Rights Advocacy that serves Valley Mountain Regional Center. And I work with an assistant Clients' Rights Advocate, Adalia Arroyo, who is a Spanish native speaker. The Office of Client Rights Advocacy is funded by a grant from the Department of Developmental Services. We're separate from the regional center, but we do work directly with regional center clients in California. And for each regional center, there is one of our offices. We offer free legal help to clients in many areas, including supplemental security income, special education, and regional center disputes, to name a few. I'm here today to discuss the points of service data that was published by Valley Mountain Regional Center for the 2022-2023 fiscal year. I reviewed the United States Census data to determine if the Asian community, Black community, or Hispanic/Latinx community were underrepresented by VMRC. I used total population data estimates for 2021 published by the Census Bureau. Because of the differences in categories, I looked at population estimates for Asian that were not Hispanic or Latino, Black or African American that were not Hispanic or Latino, and Hispanic any race. Approximately 10.81% of VMRC's catchment area identifies as Asian. However, 9.19% of VMRC's clients identify as Asian. Additionally, approximately 41.7% of VMRC's catchment area identifies as Hispanic or Latinx. However, only 39.6% of VMRC's clients identify as Hispanic or Latinx. Both the Asian community and Hispanic/Latinx community are underrepresented by about 2%. While the discrepancy appears small, the impact is large, especially when authorized expenditures are considered. Asian clients were authorized for expenditures of $16,943 per person. Hispanic and Latinx clients were authorized for expenditures of $13,788 per person. This is in stark contrast to the authorized $30,185 per person for white clients. VMRC must prioritize creating relationships with the Asian and Hispanic and Latinx communities so they are proportionally represented. While VMRC has many established relationships in the community, as we discussed here today, they must expand the network to educate the public about regional centers and meet potential clients where they are. VMRC should attend and participate in non-disabled centered community events to spread awareness within these communities, as VMRC did this past weekend at the Chinese New Year celebration. They also must take steps towards ensuring equitable funding practices. The per person authorized funding currently shows large discrepancies. This further disadvantages the Asian and Hispanic/Latinx communities. People in these communities cannot access the same level of supports and services that other races or ethnicities can. It's important that VMRC develops a list of regional center services with clear and simple descriptions, as asked for by several parents tonight. This will allow clients to have a clear idea of the services available. Clients often report to our office that they did not know about services or supports available because the service coordinator did not tell them. Currently, clients have to look through the vendor list provided to find out the types of vendors and types of services provided. However, this list is overwhelming to look at and does not include descriptions of the service areas. A clear and simple list would allow clients and their supporters to know what is available and how they can be supported in the community. OCRA understands that regional center services in the IPP must be based on each client's unique needs. However, providing a clear and simple list of services available would ensure that every client knows how the regional center offers supports and services, and they don't have to rely on service coordinators to inform them of their options. This places a large burden on clients when they have to rely on service coordinators, as service coordinators often change, and some service coordinators do not offer services unless the client explicitly asks for them and in the right categories. A clear and simple list would be a conversation starter for clients to explore their options and receive individualized support through their IPP. This would also ensure that communities that share different cultural values, as we discussed, are not overlooked for services like respite. Service coordinators need to be educated on how cultural differences may impact the services requested from clients. For example, Hispanic or Latinx families generally take it upon themselves to take care of family members. Therefore, they're less likely to ask for certain services that assist with the care of their family. However, service coordinators should be able to recognize and understand these differences to ensure that these communities are aware of the services and supports that VMRC can fund instead of relying on clients to explicitly ask for specific supports and services. VMRC should not rely on these cultural differences for unpaid services to be provided to clients by their families. Clients and their families should be informed of all services and supports available. Service coordinators should work proactively with clients to suggest and implement needed services and supports. Not only are current Asian and Hispanic / Latinx clients affected by the funding disparity, but affects those who qualify but are not yet regional center clients in these communities. Information in many communities spreads through word of mouth, and potential clients are likely to be off-put by the funding disparities at VMRC and may decide not to seek regional center services because they do not believe it's worth their time. While there is work to be done, it has not gone unnoticed by OCRA that VMRC continues to strive to meet the needs of people with developmental disabilities. It should be noted that VMRC is currently in the process of hiring the deaf and hard of hearing community coordinator, a community outreach and events manager.
Okay, so you've passed the 2-minute mark and someone else is calling that they want time to speak as well. So thank you, Colleen. You can submit your statement. Yeah. And so there's another question back there.
Oh, I think there's an issue with translation that's occurring. That was what she was signaling.
So yes, my apologies. What she was saying is that because you were going
so fast,
she wasn't able to catch up to everything.
Yes, I'm sorry. I was trying to keep up with your pace.
Yeah, you're going really fast.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I will try to I was trying to explain to them that I was trying to keep up with what you're saying, so I had to condense a lot, and then I had to take some pauses because I was trying to catch up with what you're saying. So my apologies. Disculpas.
It's just important that if you are speaking, we're translating it. So it's important that you speak slowly and clearly so that our translator and our translators can understand it. That's important. So yeah. Oh, she's over 3 minutes now. Okay. Okay, you can always submit your statement. Are there others, individuals that we have? Doug, I just want to honor time. We have 20 minutes left.
We have, I don't know about in the room, show of hands, anybody else in the room?
We have to go online because there's a number
we
of
have about
people.
5 online.
Okay,
So
there's 5 online.
Do you want to switch to online? Do you want to?
I think we should go online because there's a lot of people waiting online, but let's go there and then we can come back here and have people here to speak as well.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll go in order of the hands. First
Thank you.
is Fernando Antonio Gomez. Fernando, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Great. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Beautiful, thank you. And I'll be very brief, and I understand that there's a lot more people behind me, but Leilani, thank you for sharing the information, and of course to the team as well. It's great to see you in this position, and it's great to hear this diverse conversation. You know, there are disparities, and we know that, and that's why we're having this conversation. That's why these reports are done. But the real focus, I believe, is in the subject matter, what we're hearing, what's being communicated. And as a community partner with the Integrated Community Collaborative, I just wanted to extend our gratitude for the opportunity to work together in addressing these numbers, this data. That's so important. So what I'm hearing is a lot of the things that are being done and a lot of things that will be done. And that's what I believe is important. When we first started this meeting, Doug mentioned that there might be about 100 plus people in this meeting today. That's impressive considering the subject matter, that when it comes to data, a lot of people are just not really interested, but it shows how much interest there is in the subject matter. So if we can figure a way to maintain these connections and be able to execute on all of these things that you're sharing, Lenani, and the things that I believe the community can help bring to the table, hopefully by the next year's report, we would have seen that significant change. So here's my ask. This information is so over the top. I know there's a lot more data. Colleen just shared a lot of the specific data, but instead of waiting for a year to be able to obtain all this, would you consider maybe something like a quarterly meeting with this subject matter, with your community, and be able to start talking about the area so that by the time we get to where we're at in a year from now, we would have already had several conversations, being able to process a lot of the information, and hopefully been able to implement actionable items that will help make the change. And I'll stop my comments. Thank you.
Fernando, are you already trying to make more work for me? It's only been 2 weeks. I've only been here 2 weeks, people. I have had so many meetings already, but you know, Fernando, I'm always open to the idea of having conversations with the community. I know we'll have a meeting with the Cafecito, with ICC, and I'm looking forward to that opportunity. I'd like to work with Escucha Mi Voz. I mean, I think there are opportunities that we can do some of the learning and the listening before we get here. And I'm perfectly open to do that. And that means for people here that might have other opportunities. I just think these meetings sometimes are, you know, it shouldn't be the first time I hear something or the first time my team hears something. It should be an opportunity that we talk about, what are we doing there? Where are we in the purchase of service? Yes. But why are we here? One of the things I wanted, and I'll have my team, because they know I'm new here, so I don't want them already to start, you know, looking at me with stink eye, as we say in Hawaiian culture. But the idea is I want data to be accessible, but I also want us to think about what are the areas of positive growth and what are the areas that we still need to do more work on. And we've got a long way to go. Everything that Colleen said, I don't necessarily disagree with, but I don't think the approach is simply just go to non-disabled locations. I think it's a totality of everything. And to say to my team that has done over 50 different engagements and activities, that's some of the highest in the state. And the fact that there are still 1.62, I think you noted 1.62 difference with our Asian community, that a lot of those things in terms of those that are receiving services and those are not, That's not all solely because regional centers aren't open to it. It also is because the eligibility referrals
Amen.
and those that are actually interested in accepting services. I don't think it's a perfect system. I don't think that every aspect of the work that we do is going to be the right step. But I do think in hearing and having conversations like this, I hear from each of you, advocates in the community, parents, siblings, people that simply just care. That when I hear the things that you're saying, I've written down something each of you have said, and I will take it with me as I lead this organization, because for me, what we do in the next steps can't be done in a bubble. So I can promise to you, Fernando, I don't know if I'll have these on a quarterly basis. Please don't make my team or make me say that I'm going to make them do this. But what I will do is promise to have the opportunity to talk with you and have conversations with your community groups so that we can understand more what strategy we can implement. I mean, the fact that we just had people offering to help with our orientation, that's not a totally bad idea. Having people that are living and experiencing it, having parents and having self-advocates as part of our training, I think it's a great idea. I don't know what my team thinks, but we'll talk about all that later. So thank you, Fernando. I appreciate the welcome and I appreciate the comments. We'll continue to do that. And I can't promise you everything, but at least we'll have a cafecito coming up. Next. Yeah.
Thank you. Next, we have Carolina Arzati. Carolina, are you there?
Sí, aquí estoy. Me gustaría hacer unas dos preguntas. La
Sí, aquí,
primera, dicen ustedes que no, la comunidad latina no usa más que el respiro. Pues me gustaría decirles como persona que accede a los
Carolina, ¿puedes
recursos.
un poco más despacio para que así Evelyn tenga oportunidad de interpretar?
o solo si tomo esta pausa y interpreto lo que dijo y enseguida regreso con usted. Gracias. So, I would like to do one or two comments or questions. You guys say that the Hispanic community only uses respite, but I would like to say that, continue. Gracias.
Como persona que usa los servicios y mis hijos son clientes, es el único recurso que dan.
As a person who uses the resources and my sons are clients, that is the only resource you guys give.
He escuchado floor time varias veces, pero nunca no las han aceptado.
I have heard of floor time a couple of times before, but it has not been accepted or offered.
Otra, me gustaría también saber cómo ustedes van a llegar a las comunidades más pequeñas.
I will also like to know how is it that you guys are going to reach to smaller communities?
Por ejemplo, Patterson, Newman, Cross Landing.
For example, Harrison, ¿puede repetir los nombres, por favor?
Patterson,
Harrison,
Newman, Cross Landing, entre otros más.
With, among others.
Que ni siquiera conocen qué es un centro regional.
That don't even know what a regional center is.
¿Qué pueden hacer ustedes para que la gente pueda acudir al centro regional?
What can you guys do so people can approach and know about the regional center?
Gracias.
Thank you.
Gracias, Carolina. Con respuesta a tu pregunta sobre qué es lo que vamos a hacer para llegar a las comunidades pequeñas, una de esas cosas es como habíamos dicho, estamos tratando de llegar a la comunidad por medio de eventos. Una de las metas que tenemos es empezar y poder hacer esas relaciones con esas comunidades. Por ejemplo, en Newman sé que tienen el Fall Festival. Entonces son oportunidades que estamos buscando para poder tener un lugar donde hablar sobre los servicios. También, por ejemplo, no nada más es Newman, Patterson, tenemos Riverbank, tenemos Sonora. y son eventos que hemos estado llegando poco a poco. No te voy a decir que ya estamos en todos. Ese es el trabajo que queremos hacer, poder llegar a esas comunidades. And so just to say it really quick, and that way I'll give Evelyn a break, is I was telling Carolina that, yeah, that's one of the efforts that we wanted and we're doing as a team, is being able to get to those small communities. For example, I know Newman has a fall festival. So the goal is to be able to create those connections with the community and be able to be out there and promote our services. But it's just not Newman, Patterson. We know there's like Riverbank, there's Sonora, and we've been able to do some events there. Por ejemplo, en Riverbank, en poco a poco hemos creado una relación donde hemos podido empezar a hacer eventos ahí, al igual en Sonora, que vamos a estar muy pronto. Y es lo mismo que queremos empezar a hacer en esas comunidades, como Patterson, Cross Landing, and like in Riverbank, you know, little by little, we've been able to create a connection there where now we're going to have an event and also in Sonora. So we're working on creating those connections, Carolina. So estamos trabajando, créeme, en poder estar en los eventos que ofrecen la comunidad.
And if she has an idea about where to meet in Newman, I know Chris and I used to do the Newman Community Center. I think it was a library or community center or something that we would do outreach there. And it was really a convenient spot for people that are living in that area. Yeah. But thank you for the ideas. And I think you said something else. I think you were saying that many families might only use respite because that's the service that has been available to them, or at least that's what they feel. And I think we have to change that narrative. There are a number of services that are available. When you are a child's age, there are services that are different than when you're an adult. Some of those services don't actually begin until you're adult or living on your own, some of those different services. But that doesn't mean there aren't services available. So we do need to do a better job as an agency and with our training and our support with our service coordinators. And not everyone's going to know everything, which is why I think some of the ideas that people have of having, you know, a particular list to kind of explain 4512B of the Lanterman Act, trying to let people know what are these services. There are many different types of services that are available. Those aren't all discussed on the first IPP meeting. I think what you're trying to say is we should be talking with those about those services over time, and we should continue to educate families on what services are available, and particularly in native language. So thank you for the comment. I really appreciate it, and the question.
Okay, next we have Melva Mansilla. Melva, are you there? Melva? We will come back to Melva, and next hand up I see is Lourdes Gomez. Lourdes?
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Lourdes Gomez. I'm an independent facilitator helping the community of VMRC to transition into self-determination. And I have to say that it has been 3 years where I know that you guys are working with 20,000 people with different needs. And I acknowledge that is an incredibly difficult task. But I still get every week a call from a regional center from your area stating that they have no services, that they only meet your service coordinator. And it's really heartbroken to see that in paper they might have, 25, 30 hours of respite, but there was nothing that made it so Pacific Home Care or whichever agency you guys have a contract with assisted them to get them from having an IPP written, signed, and an authorization open, and families having services. I think we could do better. I believe self-determination, it's the foundation to do it better. But a lot of your service coordinators have no idea. I have to say, working with the self-determination team at your regional center, it's honestly a privilege and an honor because they're working really hard. They really know what they're doing. last year I had hiccups because there were people doing numbers that they were not really doing good numbers. But if you can please, in the honor of aloha, bring that kindness, the empathy and love that that word brings into everybody, can we have better communication? Can we have families get services not in paper, but in actual getting benefits, getting people to have a break? Families cannot function if they don't have breaks. I am a mom of a regional center client. From the bottom of my heart, I really think you have a good team. Most people I have come across your regional center are really fantastic. I'll say the best service coordinator I've ever met in my life, Renato. He was incredible. He worked with my client. We transitioned into self-determination. It's really incredible, but there's still a very large need, and we need families to get those services, not in paper, but in real life. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the comment. Really appreciate it. Appreciate the kudos and also the need to improve. And I think communication is a key. It's a key to everything internally at VMRC, externally, and with all of you. So we'll keep striving to improve that communication and try to make it as accessible as possible, which means plain language and doing things a little bit easier. So give me a little bit more time. It's just been a couple weeks.
Next up, we have Jonathan Zahadny. Jonathan, are you there?
Yeah, how you doing, Doug?
Good. How you doing, buddy?
Good. I just wanted to first I'll give a comment to you guys. You guys are doing a great job on that presentation. That was pretty amazing. But I got one question for one of you, if that's like for Gabby or for anybody. So as of right now, I'm on a waiting list for Diamond Place Apartments. I'm third on the waiting list. And when I get this apartment, what kind of services will I be getting if I'm going to be living on my own and all?
Chris, do you want to answer that? Yeah, we have Christine Couch. Chris, you can use this microphone, that microphone, whatever.
Hey, Jonathan, it's Christine.
Hey, Christine, how you doing?
I'm good. Hey, Jonathan. So, the services that you could receive in your own apartment are based on whatever you might need. And I remember having this conversation with you and Tony last year. So so we'll have your meeting and we'll talk with your service coordinator and you can invite your friends and we'll figure it out.
Yeah, because my service coordinator is Mary, and she said I had talked to her like a couple days ago, whatever it was, and she said something about that she might set up an IEPP meeting or whatever sometime in April or May.
Okay. Well, you can invite all your friends, invite your parents, invite anybody you want, and we'll talk about all the stuff that you might need to live successfully on your own, okay?
Okay, Christina. Thanks, guys. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So Doug, I think we have time for one more. It's 5:56. I want to give a question. Do we have someone in the room that could question or comment? Oh, no, I'll do it. Sure.
Buenas tardes otra vez a todos. Mi nombre es Marisela. Nada más yo quiero agregar que es bien importante, como dijo la defensora de los derechos, no tengo el nombre de ella, pero la lista de los servicios recreacionales que se actualice, porque es una lista que ya realmente no.
Good afternoon. Good evening, everybody. My name is Marisela, and as the rights representative, it is very important that the rights list is. ¿Qué menciona la última, perdón?
De los servicios recreacionales.
¿Está actualizada? Sí. The recreational services, it's more like to date. Continúe.
Sí, nada más eso quería agregar porque sí es una lista pues ya muy, muy vieja. Y pues como comentó también la compañera, que la agreguen al IPP es muy importante porque muchas familias no tienen idea que existe esa lista.
Yeah, I just would like to make that comment that I think it will be a good idea for it to be added to the IPP, the first IPP, because a lot of families don't have that list of recreational. Thank you.
Thank you. That's an important piece that we need to have resources available and in native languages. So thank you for that reminder. We've got that. We can sneak in a few more.
Podemos.
Buenas tardes, Leilani, gusto conocerte. Nada más es un comentario rapidito referente a los servicios recreacionales. Alguien debería de darse una vuelta con sus vendors. Sus vendors se dan el lujo de correr a nuestros niños severos que nos siguen instrucciones que son no verbales, que tienen desorden sensorial. ¿Por qué? Porque la lista de espera es muy larga.
Good evening. This will just be a very quick comment. You guys should really, this is about recreation as well. You should take a look at your vendors because they just don't accept our kids anymore, our children anymore, based on if they have some behaviors, if they have sensorial, they just whenever they don't just because they have a very long list, a waiting list, they just kick them out.
Thank you for sharing that, Alida. I think we're going to be taking a look at our social rec vendors, and I think that those are things that we have heard in other areas. It's really important that our service providers are people that understand the population that we serve. And if they need to be reminded of that, then we'll have to do that. And I know that I have Ryan right here who will also help us to get that message across. And if things aren't working out for some, then maybe they aren't working out. I think we'll have to look at all of them. So thank you for sharing your concern. If you have something specific that you may not want to share here in front of the whole world of the 100 people online in here, I would love it if you sent me an email that shares a little bit more about maybe a particular concern you have. We're always open to hear those things. And I think that's the way that we ensure quality in the individuals that we are funding to provide the services to. So I'm always a client's rights advocate at heart. Anybody else? It's 6 o'clock. Okay.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Maribel y bienvenida. Yo quiero preguntar acerca de autodeterminación en el aspecto de nosotros, bueno, yo en mi caso busco el vendor, lo atraigo al centro regional y todo para que se registre, pero en un dado caso, ellos nos cierran las puertas al final.
Well, first of all, welcome. And my comment is about self-determination. I am in self-determination and we look for vendors. We bring them to the regional center and all of it for just so at the end they close the door.
Por la razón de que les pagan, a veces son vendors pequeños y la razón de que les pagan atrasado o los FMS no hacen el pago en tiempo, entonces nos cancelan los servicios para nuestros hijos hasta que no reciben otra vez el pago.
So they close the doors and they just stop serving our children because the payments are behind, the FMS payments are behind, and then we stop receiving services until they are paid because they're not paid on time.
Entonces, yo quisiera que nos ayuden en ese aspecto a poder organizar mejor el servicio en esta forma. También quisiera...
I would like for you guys to help us in that way.
En la cuestión de de las trabajadoras de servicio, las coordinadoras de servicio, a veces no es que no saben de que son, cuando son nuevas a lo mejor, pero no saben mucho de que la mamá pedimos algún servicio, pero si no lo pedimos en las palabras que ellas lo quieren escuchar, no nos encaminan ni nos ofrecen el servicio. Nada más nos dicen, no lo damos, pero a veces está en otras palabras que nos pueden ayudar cuando no sabemos de los servicios. Entonces, quisiera ver que si las coordinadoras que van a trabajar con ellas pudieran también orientarles en el aspecto de que, ok, la mamá a lo mejor no nos estamos acercando mucho porque no sabemos hablar el idioma y aparte porque no sabemos el idioma ya más formal. Entonces, si nos pueden ayudar las coordinadoras a guiarnos y no nada más decirnos, no ofrecemos ese servicio.
So when it comes to service coordinators, us moms, when we ask for certain services, when we don't use the exact words that they use for the services, they just say that they don't have them, so we can access them. So sometimes when they're new, but even when they're not, when we don't use the exact words that they are looking for, they just denied us a service because we don't know what the language is. We don't know exactly what the name of the service is. And I would like to ask for help because yeah, it's something that it's a problem.
Y lo último es en cuestiones de la traducción. Quisiera preguntar si yo sé que estaban hablando ahorita en el camino, venía escuchando, pero van a hacer acerca de la traducción y quisiera saber si van a también cambiar los aparatos de traducción porque siempre que venimos seguido y siempre tenemos muchas batallas con esto.
And about, she said translation, but I'm gonna change it to interpretation. When it comes to interpretation, I was on my way here, I was listening on the phone, but whenever we come in person, I know that the devices that you guys use, we sometimes have a lot of problems with it. So I would like to ask, yeah, I would just like to comment on that.
Thank you. We have purchased new devices that should be on their way.
They'll be here Wednesday.
So
They'll be here
we've
Wednesday.
remedied that really quickly. So we've got that.
Very nice.
That was a timely comment, and that's a good way to end this. I can't thank you all enough, those online, those here in person that have taken your personal time tonight to come and share, raise your voices. I know I'm still going to hear your voices, if not tonight, on other occasions. I invite you to send a comment to me, a question, anything you need, and I'll get it to the right people if I don't know the answer. But I also just invite you to keep coming back, keep helping us to be better. We are not perfect. We are not, we are a social service agency. We are social workers. We are humans, and we don't get it all right. We have a lot of people to serve from very different communities. Every one of you has a different story and a different lens that you see our system. And I hope that I'll have some opportunity to work with you as a group or individually. I'm open to hearing your voices, but more importantly, I just have to thank you for being here tonight. This is my first POS meeting at Valley Mountain. Woo! And I hope that you'll keep giving me some grace as you did tonight, a year from now or maybe longer. But thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. And if there are more questions, I'll hang around for a little longer if you'd like. But thank you. Doug?
We're going to end the meeting?
Yeah.
Okay. Good night, everyone.